So when you're planting seeds, how many do you plant for a pheno hunt?
So if I'm going to go for a pheno hunt and I'm looking to specifically get a keeper from the hunt, I'm normally going to go 5 to 10 seeds. And the reason I do that is because I want at least 3 to 5 different expressions that the plant is going to go through. And I've grown cultivars where I plant 3 seeds. Every single one of them are drastically different. And I've grown cultivars throughout the years where I popped like 7 seeds, but all of them are very close to the same thing. So you're going to want to, when it comes to your own number, you're going to want to look at the stability of the genetics and also the reputability of the breeder, and find out what you're really getting and do as much homework as you possibly can. But yeah, I'll go normally the 5 to 10 range. I feel like that gives you a pretty good web. And I feel like when I go into breeding, I'm definitely going to have to pop like 7 at the minimum, because then there's that 50-50 chance that you're going to get male to female. So I'm going to want to almost guarantee that I'm going to have something that I want to breed with. And if not, cancel those ones out. And I still have to look into how to pheno hunt for an optimal male plant and how I'm going to integrate those and which way I'm going to go with the crosses. And that's going to take a whole lot of homework on its own, but that's going to be later down the road too.
Yeah, popping a 10-pack, I feel like is pretty common for home growers. A lot of people just start with the 10-pack. That's what they get from the breeder, and then just plant them all. Now, unfortunately, if you got the regular ones, I actually planted a 10-pack before, and 7 were male. So I was like, well, oof, there goes that pheno hunt. I guess that's not crazy, happening.
Man. I mean, you could breed around that and be like, well, I'm going to breed these seeds and I'll just have infinite things I can pheno hunt from these genetics and find out what it can really do. But then that plant limit comes back into play and you're like, well, I can't plant all these 150 seeds I got. So I don't know if you play Elden Ring or not, but I feel like popping 100 to 150 seeds, that's basically playing pheno hunting on easy mode. I mean, you can just pick out something and then be like, yeah, this is it. This is the one.
I wish I was
It'd be so good.
Pheno hunt with hundreds of them. That would be incredible, but unfortunately, that's not legal for me.
Right, yeah. Me too, man. Me too.
Okay, so you planted your seeds. What are you using for a medium typically, and then container size and type?
Yeah, so I'll go into, I'll go right from planting in a solo cup, letting that plant sprout, and then once its roots get too big for that, and I do that to avoid overwatering primarily, but also not to waste too much space on a individual plant or too much material. So it'll go from the solo cup right into a 1-gallon fabric pot, and I'll use fabric pots throughout the entire grow. As for the medium, it'll normally be peat moss unless I go with an organic mix, but if I go with an organic mix, it normally was amended with peat moss. So peat moss primarily, and that's just how I've been doing it. I feel like it has good drainage, good aeration, and it's just a solid grow medium overall. And then when I actually get into the flower, I'll normally increase my pot size, whatever it is, by at least 3 to 5 gallons. Because I want to give those roots time to expand. And if I'm really worried about the growth rate, it will be more, but that's pheno specific, that is cultivar specific, and you just kind of got to know your plants and how often you're transplanting at that point, because once you get into flower, you're going to have to stop that.
Got it. Yeah, the larger container, the easier it can be, generally speaking. Now, I learned a little tip from a breeder way back, well, actually not too far back, but Canadian Leaf Genetics, shout out to him. He was on the podcast before. He had mentioned that he does it in 2-gallon containers. And I was like, that's pretty interesting. 2 gallons. That's kind of small. But he's keeping the plant small, because he's really just pheno hunting and he's not really growing these plants massive. So he's basically putting them in 2-gallon containers. And when I tried it, it actually worked out pretty good for me. I had them all hooked up to auto watering systems because it becomes difficult because the medium can dry out so quickly in 2 gallons. So adding an auto watering system like Blue Mats, for example, it makes things so much easier. So I've had a lot of success doing a 2-gal, and then I can fit more plants in a in that grow space, whatever grow space I'm using, whether it be a 4x4, 4x8 or whatever. Now I've done pheno hunts in 3 gallons, 5 gallons. And like I said, it just makes it a little bit easier when it comes to like watering and stuff. And
yeah. I did a low-key content creator night, and I was actually looking through all these different channels and trying to find smaller ones that maybe don't have the appreciation or ones that are doing something unique. And there was this guy who only grew like super small plants, and he had, I can't remember if he had them in like a solo cup or like different small containers, but they were all basically like directly into flower. He was like, this is enough flower for me. I don't use that much, and I only need 4 plants that yield like a half ounce to an ounce. And I'm like, that's really cool for you, man. And there's another YouTuber that grows exclusively in Pringle cans, from what I can tell. So I don't know if you've seen that or heard of him. But then there's also the Solo Cup Challenge that's going on right now. So there's some crazy stuff you can do with smaller containers. That's just not something I do a lot, and I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable unless I dialed in a auto watering system around that.
oh, absolutely. You can definitely do stuff with smaller containers really well. Shout out to Mr. Boofman. I think he grows in 1 gal. You know, I'm trying to get him on the podcast here. But he gets some amazing results with those small containers. I'm just like, how do you do it? And he's got these real tall plants too. So I'm trying to get him on the podcast eventually and talk about that, because you can do so much in small containers. And I think it's generally frowned upon. It's like, oh, what is this guy doing? It's real small scale and stuff. But it's like different strokes for different folks. Like that gentleman said that you had went to his channel, he's only growing for himself. So he only needs a half ounce per container. Good. Let him do his thing. You know what I mean? If he's able to do it, and that works for him, you know, hats off to him. But yeah, there's so many different styles to grow this plant, so many different size containers you can use and ways to go about it. So yeah, that's what makes it so fun, in my opinion.
Yeah, and one more thing too that actually goes along with that is that there's actual limits to how much you can have within your household, and some states they limit it at 10 ounces, and you're like, well, if I can only have 10 ounces, I can't grow a plant that's 1, 2, 3 pounds. Like, I'm literally not allowed to do that. So that's something else that people need to take into consideration too, especially when they're frowning upon different growers' grow styles. It's like, not only are you wrong, but you're wrong.
How about nutrients? What do you typically use for fertilizer?
So going into nutrients, I've basically grown from beginning to end with Remo nutrients, and I've done garden, like the kitchen scraps, organic material, just kind of amended into our peat moss mix into a giant pile in the backyard, and that would serve for our outdoor soil. And those are the 2 routes that I've gone down so far. And I've only been doing this for 4 years, working on my 5th year, so I haven't had a lot of time to experiment or experiment well. So I'm looking forward to branching off again. But it's been synthetic indoor, organic outdoor, and that's just kind of how it's been up to this point.
This clip is brought to you by AC Infinity. Use discount code MrGrowIt15 to save on any of their products.